Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the waning influence of France in the Western Africa. And this waning influence we are seeing across those countries where France has a colony in the earlier time. Now let us try to understand this in more detail. So most recently, the President Alassane Ouattara of country called as Ivory Coast, situated along the western coast of Africa, he has announced that he has ordered the French troops who are stationed in his country to withdraw by the end of the month of January. Now, this is not the isolated case of the Ivory Coast only. Earlier in the last month of December as well, several West African countries such as Chad, Senegal, they also have asked France to basically take off its military base and began to withdraw the troops from its territory. Senegal, if you talk about it, even has asked to close all the French military bases that France had established over many years in the country, commenting that the presence of a French military base, which is an outside power, which is a foreign country, it is incompatible with the sovereignty of the country. That means Senegalese sovereignty is being compromised due to the presence of French military, and it is on this ground they have asked to withdraw the forces. And before these countries also, if you take a look at some of the countries in West Africa, such as Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they already have expelled the French soldiers and any kind of military bases there. Now, the reason behind this can be understood from several perspectives. The first main reason that the countries have officially provided is obviously the compromise of national sovereignty, because obviously you can understand if any foreign power's military base is present in your territory, you will feel that your sovereignty is being violated. And this presence of the military of the France or military bases of France was overall under the strategy that the France has maintained called as Francafrique. That means French plus Africa. So France in the Africa. Largely, this was a strategy adopted by the France to maintain a strong economic, political, and military influences, and this was something that is referred as Francafrique. Now, the reason why France wanted to maintain such a strong influence in almost all the spheres of the country's bilateral relation, is because of the historical reason. Historical reason is that the France was the colonial power who used to have control over these countries, at least since these countries got independence from the France. Apart from that, another operation in talk about the Senegal. The French military was present in the Senegal and Ivory Coast to lend support and help under the Operation Barkhane. And overall, if we talk about in the Western Africa, they have been facing several security challenges, either because of the Islamic radical groups such as ISIS, terrorism, drug-related drug mafias, or even in the context of the gold and diamond smuggling. So, to provide overall a sense of security, the operation was launched by the French military, and that is why they were stationed here. If we talk about the Chad and France all obviously had already had a defense pact before that has existed for almost 4 to 5 decades and does not align with its security requirement as of now. That is why Chad also has asked the French to withdraw its troops. And the ending of the defense agreement is like taking back the national sovereignty. That is again what the countries are largely arguing here. So overall, what you can understand, all the countries, they have given at least the official reason is the no compromise they want to make as far as the national sovereignty is concerned. Now, it is not only the decision of the rulers or the decision of military commanders of these countries, rather this also is something that is demanded by the public also. Overall, due to the continuous presence of French military and the forces in the territory of these countries, there was a large scale public dissatisfaction. And dissatisfaction was not because of no reason, rather it is because of the failure of the French troops. Because we have talked about the insurgency which the French troops were willing to or were largely involved in fighting these countries, largely against the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda like radical Islamic group, they have failed to quell the insurgency. Not only they have failed to quell the insurgency, but because of the offensive actions taken by the French military, it has created a large scale intensification of violent activities in this region. So rather than improving the situation, the presence of French military has kind of worsened the situation. That is why the public was not willing to accept them anymore in their territory, and that is what they have been continuously demanding from their ruler. So overall, what we can understand in last couple of decades, a very strong anti-French sentiment has developed along the citizens. and this is something that the government has also taken into cognizance and thus has asked the French to take the decision. Apart from this, if we also try to understand, it is not only because of these two reasons, but also in the today's globalized world, every country is looking for serving its best interest and take decision which is in the best interest of the nation. So in the today's modernized and globalized world, there are not only powers or colonial powers or historical colonial powers such as France which can provide security, but there are many other countries that are willing to do so. And that is where we see the diversification of relationship from traditional colonial to the new partners. And the two major new partners that have emerged in most of these African countries are either Russia or China. So the military government in Western Africa, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, they have built a very strong military ties with the Russian mercenaries to fight the insurgency, and that is why they also feel that there is no longer any need for a continuous or permanent French presence. So for military leaders, Russian mercenaries also have, for them it is advantageous to have linkages and relations with Russian mercenaries because they do not come with the baggage of adhering to the democratic values. That means this relationship with Russian mercenaries is basically a kind of client-patron relationship. These countries provide access to the resources, access to the money, and then the mercenaries from Russia, they work without looking into human rights violation or talking about or preaching about the upholding the human rights or upholding the democratic values and all that. So the interference that they used to feel before from the French side, that is no longer the case here. So that is why the military rulers especially who are ruling these countries, they feel more, we can say, comfortable with the relationship with Russia. Besides, Russia has successfully spread an image as a better security provider in Africa. So this is also kind of domino effect we can see. One country has taken this decision and there they might have seen improvement in the situation. They have seen that it is much more better to have a linkage with Russia. So that is why other countries also have started to take the same kind of approach, and that is why in the last month of December we have seen in January, and even going forward we can see some other countries taking similar kind of decision. So impact, if you try to understand, that will happen because of this is obviously the end of the France decade long influence. That is the first impact we can see on the African nation, and this will not be marked by any kind of gap. Rather, this gap or the void that will be left by the French military will soon be filled up by the Russia, that already we have seen the cases of countries such as Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, and not addressed or contained insurgency. That is the reason why French has been people have, or public has been largely against the French presence. The military regimes have strengthened the region with a they have formed an alliance of state called as Alliance of Sahel State. Now Sahel is the region that is situated to the south of the Sahara Desert. As you know that Sahara is spread over the entire north and western part of Africa. So in the Sahel region we can see we have countries such as Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali and Mauritania. So these countries have formed these alliances, and these all countries, the alliance member of these countries, they have a common sentiment, and that common sentiment is having an anti-French policy, anti-French stance, and would likely bring Chad, Senegal and Ivory Coast also to join the Sahel alliance now, since they have also expelled the French troops and French military from their territory. Now, after the withdrawal, what is going to be the overall impact on the France? This also we can understand on the various fronts. So first of all, we have discussed it is nothing but a kind of obituary for the Franc-Afrique policy of the France, where it has maintained a strong economic, political and military network and military linkages. Now, obviously, we can try to understand that as the political influence of France weakens here, it will also affect adversely the economic relations it has till date enjoyed with this West African country, especially in the context of the resource extraction, exploitation and the uses. Not only that, because of the removal of the French military bases and the soldiers, there will be a waning military presence, and it would impact the international reputation and image of the France also. Because till now, France, as we have discussed, it has sent its forces, sent its troops, deployed its troops basically to West Africa region to fight the insurgency, to fight the terrorism. Now it is no longer able to do so. So the image that it has created as a country fighting a global war against terrorism, and it is a defender of international values and human rights, will be undermined in the new reality. So that is the effect that we can expect on the France. Now, this is not only the case about the France. Overall, if you try to understand, most or lot of European countries have their colonies in the Africa in the earlier time. These can be, for example, apart from France, you have Belgium, you had Italy, you have Germany. So overall, what we are seeing is not only the weakening of influence of a single country such as France, but overall the entire European influence in Africa is something that is getting weaker and weaker day by day. And that is because of the geopolitical reality of the conflict, the kind of world which we are living in today. For example, the European Union is also having and facing a lot of struggle in almost all the dimensions, all the spheres of a country or organization's life. This can be political dimensions, security dimensions, economic dimensions. So they have their own set of challenges which they are finding it quite hard to navigate through and basically tackle through. So in this context, for the European countries, it becomes very difficult, or we can say they are not paying so much attention in handling autocracies that continuously are developing in African countries because of the coup, the migrant issues, as well as the anti-Europe sentiments that has been developed in the West Africa. For example, anti-France sentiments, that sentiment that we have talked about. So all these issues has been put on the back burner. For example, especially in the last 2 years, the entire Europe is largely involved in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So due to this, another set of challenges have been created. For example, the gas supply, the cheap gas supply, we can say, to many European countries has been stopped, and that has caused a further anger among the public because the inflation has increased there. So they are finding it very difficult to manage economically as well. Plus, they have to now focus more in strengthening their own border, especially along the NATO's border, we can say. And also the Donald Trump has come into power, so he is emphasizing that the European countries should spend more amount of their GDP in the NATO common defense. So earlier target was 2%, but Trump is now asking that you should spend 5% of your national GDP in the NATO's defense. So these all have put extra burden on the resources of this country, whether it is the military resources or the economic resources. And that is why they are no longer so much focused in the African region, and this is something that has been taken advantage of by the African rulers as well. Now obviously the departure of the Europe, or in this case France, from Africa has created a gap which has been quickly filled up by the Russia as far as the military vacuum is concerned. On the other hand, the economic vacuum that European Union and the countries have left, that is being filled by the China, because it is massively investing in many projects and the countries of Africa through its global Belt and Road initiative. And the example of this we can see from the simple fact that if you look at the trade relation between the Africa and European Union, the trade surplus has continuously declined, and it has declined by 15%, by 15 to 35 billion euros. On the other hand, the trade relation with China is continuously growing, and China today maintains a surplus of more than 70 billion euros as far as the surplus is concerned. So that is how we can see how the economic weight has shifted from Europe toward China, or from Europe toward Asia. So this is what we can take as a lesson from the recent departure of France from some of the countries of West Africa, and overall its implications in the African region. So if you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more such content. Thank you very much.